Hey, guess what? Johnny Carson spilled the beans on some old Hollywood stars who got famous by sleeping with the right people. For 30 years, Johnny Carson let America hang out in his late-night show, laughing and chatting with the biggest Hollywood stars. But when the cameras turned off and everyone went home, Carson kept talking in his office with no mics on and no need to hide the truth. In these private chats, Hollywood's perfect stories fell apart. Stars who looked super nice in public would share crazy secrets about the bad side of the business. And nothing got people talking more openly than the deals where sex helped build or ruin careers in old Hollywood. Johnny knew all the secrets, said a former NBC boss who worked with Carson during his late-night years. Stars would tell him stuff they'd never say out loud, especially after some drinks at his famous after-show parties. And what they said about how Hollywood really worked would have freaked out regular folks big time. Carson became known as the guy Hollywood trusted most with secrets, making a safe spot where big stars could admit the tough truths behind their perfect public stories. When talks turned to how people really got famous in the old studio days, the stories showed a world where talent wasn't the main thing, being willing to have sex often mattered more. Carson got the huge difference between Hollywood's shiny public look and its real private side better than anyone, said a former Tonight Show producer. He knew which stars made it on Real Talent and which ones made it in the bedroom. And while he kept quiet on TV in private, he was straight up about the casting couch stuff that ran the old studio world. Tonight, we're sharing the shocking private talks Johnny Carson had about 8 old Hollywood stars whose way to fame needed way more than just good acting. These aren't just gossip or guesses, but stuff from the guy who was Hollywood's top secret keeper and friend. The real story about who slept their way to the top and what it cost them. Before she became Marilyn Monroe, she was a struggling actress who couldn't even get auditions. What she did next even shocked Johnny Carson, who later said every big role she got came with a private sexy favor. First, I'm much happier though. Is it true that you won Marilyn Monroe, the star built through smart affairs? When Marilyn Monroe sat on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show couch in the early 1960s, America saw the perfect blonde sex symbol. Glamorous, flirty, and like she was born to be a star. But Carson, who was great at seeing past fake public images, knew a much more complicated story about how Monroe got famous. In private talks with close friends, Carson reportedly shared what Hollywood insiders had known for years but denied in public. Monroe's fast rise from unknown model to worldwide superstar happened because of planned relationships with powerful guys who could help her career. She smiled on stage, but she was super tired off it. Carson supposedly told a producer after one of Monroe's shows, "Every big chance in her career came from a guy who wanted something back. First photographers, then agents, then studio bosses. That's Hollywood's dirty secret. Talent gets you started a little, but for lots of women back then, something else was needed to go all the way." From what people heard in Carson's private opinions, he learned from his many Hollywood contacts about Monroe's rumored affairs with top bosses at different studios, including the super pushy Darryl F. Zanuck at 20th Century Fox. These weren't just random love stories, but smart moves to get famous. Carson wasn't judging her, said a former Tonight Show worker who heard many of Carson's after-show talks about Monroe. He saw her as someone who knew the bad rules of the system and used them smartly. He actually respected her clever thinking. The public saw the dizzy blonde, but Johnny saw the smart brain under that act. What made Monroe's story super interesting to Carson was how she turned starting as someone used into having power. Early on, she might have been pushed into relationships with guys who controlled her job future, but later she learned to use her sex appeal to get what she wanted in a business that gave women little control. Johnny thought Marilyn finally turned the tables, said a coworker from the 1970s. She started getting used by the system, but ended up using it back. The sad part, like Johnny saw it, was how this deal-making in relationships hurt her chance for real love. By the time she had real power in Hollywood, she couldn't tell acting from real life anymore. Carson's thoughts on Monroe's smart relationships weren't just guesses. They came from talks with directors, producers, and other actors who saw how the old studio system worked up close. The casting couch wasn't rare. It was normal and decided which new actresses got chances and which stayed unknown. What interested Carson about Monroe's story wasn't juice. T that she played the game, said a former NBC boss, but how it both made her and finally broke her. He saw her as the best example of how Hollywood could ruin people. Someone who got everything she wanted but lost who she really was along the way. Joan Crawford didn't just sleep her way up, she used it like a weapon. Carson shared how the actress kept careful notes on her powerful lovers, turning Hollywood's bad system against itself. The image will take care of itself. But I played the career women long before that owner of the truck drivers. You remember that too, Joan Crawford, from poor factory girl to boss lady. Few Hollywood changes amaze Johnny Carson more than Joan Crawford's wild trip from poor factory worker to Oscar-winning star and Pepsi boss. Behind the scenes, Carson told stories about Crawford that showed how she smartly used relationships with men and women to climb Hollywood's tough ladder. She didn't climb the ladder, she owned it. Carson supposedly joked to his close friends after one of Crawford's Tonight Show visits. This wasn't just praise for her work wins, but respect for how well she handled a system meant to take advantage of women like her. From people who knew Carson's private talks, he heard from Hollywood sources about Crawford's early days when she supposedly made smart relationships with big directors, producers, and studio bosses who could help her career. Unlike many actresses hurt by the casting couch, Crawford supposedly handled these with clear thinking. Johnny thought Crawford played chess while others played checkers, said a former Tonight Show producer. From what he heard from old Hollywood folks, she kept careful notes in her head about which relationships helped her career and which didn't. She wasn't just sleeping with powerful guys. She was building a group of helpers that made her stronger than many of the guys who first used her. Super interesting to Carson were the rumors about Crawford's smart relationships with women too. In a time when being gay was totally hidden in Hollywood, Crawford supposedly got close to powerful women who could get her to certain directors or fancy groups. These weren't always sexy relationships, but showed Crawford knew power in Hollywood wasn't just with men. Carson once said what made Crawford different was she refused to be anyone's victim, remembered a staff writer from the 1970s Tonight Show. She got early that in the studio world, sex was like money. Instead of fighting it, she became an expert, treating relationships like smart deals, not love stories. This smart way went past just getting famous. From Carson's private thoughts, she kept power in Hollywood long after most actresses got dropped by making ties with gossip writers, reviewers, and later business bosses outside movies. Her marriage to Pepsi boss Alfred Steele was the top of this plan, giving her power in business when her movie power started fading. Johnny saw Crawford as the best Hollywood survivor, said the former NBC boss. He told coworkers she was one of the few stars who got the game from the start and didn't let it break her. While other actresses got ruined by deal-making relationships, Crawford stayed cool enough to use it for her win. Carson's secret thoughts on Crawford showed his big picture of how the studio system worked, a place where talent was needed but not enough, and smart personal ties often decided who got chances and who got left out. Crawford's story, like Carson saw it, showed both the bad side of this system and how someone could get through it without breaking. In a picture you're going to see, Cary Grant asks her if her motor is running. Well, it was running. America's toughest guy star was hiding Hollywood's biggest secret. Carson knew the real deal about Rock Hudson's fake straight life with the studios and the powerful guys he had to please to save his career and life. 3. Rock Hudson, the made-up straight guy. Few Hollywood lies interested Johnny Carson more than the big fake story built around Rock Hudson's public image. As one of the top money-making leading men in the 1950s and 60s, Hudson acted like the perfect tough straight guy on screen while hiding he was gay from everyone. Behind the scenes, Carson learned about the hard and sometimes bad deals Hudson made to keep this lie going. Rock wasn't straight, but his drive to be famous was, Carson supposedly told a producer in a private talk in the 1970s. This funny comment got right to Hudson's tough spot. A gay guy whose career needed America to think he was super straight. From people who knew Carson's private chats, he heard from Hollywood contacts about the huge steps taken to hide Hudson's secret, like set up dates with girls, a fake marriage to his agent's secretary, and studio-made stories about pretend romances with girl co-stars. These weren't random lies, but a planned big effort run by Hudson's agent Henry Wilson and studio bosses who spent millions on his straight guy image. Johnny was really interested in the huge lie machine that made Rock's public self, said a former Tonight Show staff writer. He told coworkers it wasn't just hiding Hudson was gay. It was making a whole fake straight life with made-up love history, planned photos, and paid girls to go out with him in public. Most upsetting to Carson were the rumors about Hudson's early days and his deal with Henry Wilson, the agent who found him and turned truck driver Roy Fitzgerald into star Rock Hudson. From Hollywood insiders who talked openly with Carson, Wilson was known for wanting sex from his young guy clients for help and chances. Carson thought Hudson made a bad deal early on, said the former NBC boss. From what he heard from many people, Johnny got that Hudson's first big break probably meant sex with Wilson and maybe other powerful guys who could help. This wasn't just hiding he was gay. It was giving in to being used as the cost for a chance. This showed the hard choice gay actors had in old studios. Hide who you are and maybe win big or be real and almost sure lose your career. For Hudson, picking fame meant living a constant lie with studio PR people, agents, and bosses all helping the big fake to protect their money in his straight appeal. Johnny saw Hudson's story as one of Hollywood's saddest, said a coworker close to Carson. He got everything he wanted in work but paid with no real personal life. Even at his most famous, one of the biggest stars ever, he lived scared his real self would get out and everything fall apart. Carson's interest in Hudson wasn't nosy, but part of his big interest in the gap between Hollywood's perfect public stories and the messy real lives hidden. Hudson's case was maybe the worst example. A guy whose whole public self was made up to fit what society and studios wanted for money. What Carson thought was most telling about Hudson wasn't just the personal lie, said the former staff writer, but how many people helped keep it going. Studio bosses, producers, co-stars, reporters, tons of people knew the truth but joined the lie because they made money from his straight image. It showed how rotten the whole PR system was. It's like crying out, "Why didn't someone guide me? Why didn't someone stop me?" They could not have. Her 7 marriages were big news, but Carson knew Lana Turner's real love story was way more planned. Every contract she signed had secret sex terms, he told friends. And those terms made her one of Hollywood's strongest women. 4. Lana Turner, the sweater girl's smart hookups. When Lana Turner was on The Tonight Show in the 1960s and 70s, people saw a fancy star whose wild personal life, like 7 marriages and her teen daughter stabbing her boyfriend Johnny Stompanato, often got more attention than her acting. But Johnny Carson, with his many Hollywood friends, knew a deeper truth about how Turner got famous. She had 7 husbands. Hollywood was the 8th. Carson supposedly said to his close group after one of Turner's shows. This wasn't just a joke, but seeing how Turner's love life, public and private, shaped her job path from her discovery at Schwab's drugstore, really a myth to being one of MGM's top money makers. From people close to Carson's private thoughts, he heard from Hollywood sources about Turner's smart way with relationships early on. What looked like wild love stories to the public often had job plans, with Turner supposedly hooking up with guys who could help her at MGM and get better parts. Johnny thought Turner was way smarter than her public image, said a former Tonight Show producer. From old Hollywood stories he heard, many of her early relationships were made knowing they'd help her work. This wasn't just her thing. It was how driven women survived in studios, but she was really good at using personal ties for job wins. What made Turner's way special, from Carson's secret thoughts, was Turner starting as used into having power. At first facing the same casting couch pressure as young actresses, she soon got picky, choosing guys who could give clear job help instead of just giving in. Carson saw Turner as someone who learned Hollywood's secret rules perfectly, said the former NBC boss. He told coworkers she got early that love stuff wasn't just personal, it was business deals. Instead of fighting it, she used it for her good. This planned way also covered Turner's ties with directors and co-stars plus studio bosses. Carson heard from many about how Turner made smart links with powerful directors who could show her off well or guy stars whose okay could get her better parts. These weren't always long relationships, but often for certain job goals. Johnny liked her practical side, remembered a staff writer from the 1970s Tonight Show. He once said Turner never mixed love with business. She got how Hollywood really worked and didn't pretend it was fair when she knew choices happened. For lots of reasons besides talent, Turner's way showed the few choices women had in studios where real power was mostly men's. In that world, smart love ties were one of the only ways actresses could affect job choices. While today we might question if those relationships were real, Carson reportedly got them for their time. What interested Carson about Turner was she wouldn't just go along with her career, said the former producer. In a time when actresses were treated like swappable things, she found ways to take control and shape her job path. Her ways might surprise people now, but they were a kind of fight back in a system made to keep women from control. Studio boss Harry Cohn controlled every part of Rita Hayworth's career, like who she dated, how she looked, and which guys she had to hang out with after work. Carson called it Hollywood's creepiest known secret. 5. Rita Hayworth dancing to Columbia's Bossy song. Few Hollywood changes were bigger than turning Margarita Cancino into Rita Hayworth, the fancy love goddess who became one of the top icons of the 1940s. Behind this big change was a creepy story of control and using people that Johnny Carson learned from talks with Hollywood insiders who saw it happen. She danced for the world, but one guy picked the song, Carson supposedly told close friends when talking about Hayworth's career. That guy was Harry Cohn, the mean boss of Columbia Pictures, whose deal with Hayworth was one of Hollywood's worst examples of studio control over girl stars. From people who knew Carson's private talks, he heard upsetting stuff about Cohn's total control of almost every part of Hayworth's life and work. This started with changing her looks, like painful hair removal to raise her hairline and hide her Spanish looks, dyeing her hair red from brown, and even changing her name to hide her heritage and went to her personal life and daily stuff. Johnny was upset by what he heard about Cohn's treatment of Hayworth, said a former Tonight Show producer. From talks with people who worked at Columbia back then, he got that Cohn basically saw Hayworth as his own thing. This wasn't just controlling her work chances, but saying who she could date, what parties she could go to, and even how she acted in private. Most creepy were the rumors Carson heard about Cohn spying with bugs. From Hollywood insiders who talked straight with Carson, Cohn supposedly bugged Hayworth's house to listen to her talks and make sure she didn't badmouth the studio or date guys he didn't like. This huge privacy break showed Cohn's need to control every bit of his top girl star's life. Carson thought Hayworth's studio deal went past normal contracts into something worse, said the former NBC boss. From many sources, Johnny got that Hayworth's first chances and ongoing success at Columbia came with quiet expectations to be available for Cohn and other powerful guys he wanted to impress or reward with her time. This showed the huge power studio bosses had in old Hollywood. Under the system, stars were stuck in long contracts that let bosses like Cohn control work chances and public image. For girl stars like Hayworth, saying no to a boss's wants, work or personal, could mean no pay suspension, bad projects, or career ruin with planned bad press. Johnny saw Hayworth as one of Hollywood's saddest people, said a coworker close to Carson. He told friends she basically traded her life control for fame, only to find the cost way too high. By the time she was big enough to fight Cohn's control, the using patterns were already set. Carson's interest in Hayworth's story came from his big curiosity about the personal cost of Hollywood fame. From his special spot as the entertainment world's top secret friend, he learned about the gap between public view and private truth for many stars. Hayworth's case was maybe the worst gap. A woman treated like a goddess on screen but owned like property off it. What Carson thought was most eye-opening about Hayworth wasn't just Cohn's using her, said the former staff writer, but how many people let it happen. Producers, directors, other bosses, lots of people saw his treatment but stayed quiet because fighting Cohn could end their jobs. It showed how rotten the whole studio system was. Tyrone Power's heartthrob image hid Hollywood's riskiest secret. Carson shared how the star lived a dangerous double life, sleeping with producers, both guys and girls, while keeping the fake look that made fans buy tickets. I don't know, you're probably suffering from shock and exposure. Oh no, just curiosity, you went to quite some pains to get 6. Tyrone Power, the heartthrob's secret deals. With his great looks and charm, Tyrone Power was the classic Hollywood leading guy in the 1930s and 40s, starring in adventure and love movies that made him one of the era's top crowd pullers. But Johnny Carson, from private talks with old Hollywood people who knew the truth behind Power's managed image, got the complicated real story of the star's rise. The studio's golden boy. In more ways than one, Carson supposedly said to friends when talking about Power's career. This hinted at what Carson learned about Power's smart relationships with big people at 20th Century Fox and more, relationships with both genders that showed the actor's practical way to get ahead. From people who knew Carson's private thoughts, he heard from many Hollywood sources about Power's readiness to make helpful ties with both male and female power people who could shape his career. These weren't public loves, but quiet deals done with studio bosses knowing, who liked Power's money-making while keeping his straight image safe. Johnny thought Power got Hollywood's secret rules better than most, said a former Tonight Show producer. From old insider stories, Power knew early his super looks could get him ahead with smart ties to big people of both genders. While the public saw the dashing straight love guy, the truth was way more complicated. What made Power's case different from Carson's thoughts, was the quiet okay from the studio system. Unlike actors hiding being gay completely like Rock Hudson, Power supposedly worked with some understanding from bosses who knew his private deals but liked his money enough to keep them secret. Carson saw Power as someone who made a tricky deal with the studio system, said the former NBC boss. He told coworkers Power basically agreed, keep the public straight heartthrob look that made girls swoon and get some private freedom as long as totally hidden. This deal supposedly included Power's private auditions, a nice word for meetings with directors or producers that went past talk to sexy stuff. From old Hollywood people who talked openly with Carson, these helped Power get better parts and nicer treatment in the studio. Johnny liked how Power handled such dangerous stuff, remembered a staff writer from the 1970s Tonight Show. He once said Power satisfied studio money needs and his own wants without the heavy mind pain that broke many actors living full lives. It wasn't freedom, but an okay deal in a time with few choices. Power's way showed the super limited options for actors whose sexuality didn't fit public wants in old Hollywood. In a time when getting outed as gay or bi meant instant career end, smart hiding instead of being open was the only way for many. What interested Carson about Power's story wasn't just the personal deals, said the former producer, but how they showed the big fake of the studio system. The same studios that made strict moral rules and contracts and sold stars as perfect Americans quietly allowed private deals that went against those public stories. As long as they made money, I can't act, but I can make men happy. Carson shared what Ava Gardner whispered to him after cameras off and why that simple truth made her Hollywood's most bravely honest star. 7. News from the gaming table. Very good. Alberto is having a fantastic bank. It's about time. Last night that Greek took him for a whole South American jungle. 7. Ava Gardner, real honesty in a fake world. Among the Hollywood big names Johnny Carson talked to over his career, few amazed him with their straight talk more than Ava Gardner, the beautiful actress whose wild loves with guys like Frank Sinatra and Howard Hughes got as much buzz as her movies possessed a great openness to admit how Hollywood really worked, even when it went against the nice stories the business liked. From people close to Carson, Gardner's Tonight Show visits often kept going in his office after, with the actress sharing real thoughts about her studio days once cameras stopped. It was in one of these private talks that Gardner supposedly made her most known confession. I was a bad actress, but I was great in bed. Johnny believed her, said a former Tonight Show producer who saw their late talks. Not that she was bad at acting, Carson thought she had real talent, but that her early chances came more from her amazing looks and readiness for smart relationships than acting alone. What amazed him most was her honesty about it when most stars pretended Hollywood was all fair talent. Gardner's straight talk supposedly came from her start. Unlike many stars dreaming of art, Gardner got found when a studio guy saw her photo in her brother-in-law's shop window. This random start maybe let her stay clear-eyed about how the system worked. Carson saw Gardner as Hollywood's most realistic person, said the former NBC boss. He told coworkers she got from the start that the studio ran on many things. Talent was one, but looks, sex appeal, and smart ties were just as big. While other actresses pretended success was only talent, Gardner privately admitted the many ways women got ahead. This practical side went to Gardner's famous relationships with top entertainment guys. From Carson's private thoughts, these wherein. Just wild loves, but often had power games that showed Gardner's get of how influence worked in Hollywood. Her marriages to Mickey Rooney, Artie Shaw, and Frank Sinatra each linked her to guys in different power spots in the business. Johnny liked her smart moves, remembered a staff writer from the 1970s Tonight Show. He thought Gardner was way more planned than her party girl image. Her ties with key people weren't random. They showed sharp get of power and how being close could help her job. What made Gardner different from many others, from Carson's thoughts, was refusing to pretend Hollywood was fair talent only. While many actresses who used smart ties later changed stories to say talent only, Gardner kept honest about all the factors in her success. Carson thought Gardner's honesty made her risky to the studio system, said the former producer. The whole PR machine was about saying stars won on talent and fans only. Gardner admitting sex and ties helped threaten that fake story. That's why studios controlled star talk hard and why Gardner's truth was so rare. This honesty went to how Gardner saw her own acting. Unlike many stars pushing to be seen as serious artists no matter what, Gardner kept clear on her good and bad points. This self-know amazed Carson, who talked to tons of stars with big egos about talent. Johnny found her no-fake attitude refreshing, said the coworker close to Carson. In a business full of lies, Gardner wouldn't lie to herself about who she was and how she won. That realness made her fun to talk to and actually a better actress than she thought. Her acting had raw truth that more skilled but fake actors missed. Before he was the king, Clark Gable was Hollywood's most unwilling guy escort. Carson shared the shocking deal that started Gable's career and why MGM bosses called it the best investment we ever made. I'd like to extend my apology for my conduct of last night. Oh, but Red, I was very drunk and quite swept off my feet by your charms. 8. Clark Gable, the King's secret start. Few Hollywood changes were bigger than Clark Gable going from struggling stage actor to King of Hollywood. The tough manly star whose pull with girl fans made him MGM's top guy asset for almost 20 years. Behind this big rise was a complicated story of smart ties and practical deals that Johnny Carson learned from talks with old industry people who saw Gable's early days. He earned every role twice, once on camera, once in private. Carson supposedly told friends when talking about Gable's fame path. This hinted at what Carson learned about Gable's early Hollywood when the struggling actor supposedly made helpful ties with big industry people who could help, including especially a powerful older woman producer who really liked the handsome young guy. From people who knew Carson's private talks, he heard from many about Gable's tie with Pauline Wallace, a connected agent and producer who was sister to producer Hal Wallace. This tie supposedly went past work help to personal and sped up Gable's chances for big roles and top directors. Johnny thought Gable's early career had smart deals the star later tried hard to hide from his life story, said a former Tonight Show producer. From Hollywood old-timers, Carson got that Gable's first big roles came through ties with powerful people attracted to the handsome actor and ready to help him. What made Gable's case different from some smart tie stories was how fully he moved past these early deals. From Carson's thoughts, once Gable got real star status from fan love for movies like It Happened One Night and Gone with the Wind, he cut ties with the relationships that helped at first, making a new story focused on talent and fans, not connections. Carson saw Gable as someone who accepted his past without letting it define him, said the former NBC boss. He told coworkers Gable basically split his early stuff off, admitting privately what he did for chances while publicly going with the self-made star story fans liked, and that fit his screen tough guy. This remake self also went to Gable's ties with studios and directors. From insiders who talked straight with Carson, The star's early yes to powerful requests turned into stronger demands once he proved his money value. The young actor supposedly on call for some producers became the big star who set his own rules. Johnny liked Gable's strong mind, remembered a staff writer from the 1970s Tonight Show. He once said Gable used the system without letting it ruin him, making needed deals to start but keeping enough real self to truly earn later success. Not everyone who made early deals switched as well. Gable's way showed both the few choices for new actors in old Hollywood and the huge drive needed for lasting win. No matter how a career started, in a business with lots of talent but chances controlled by few powerful people, smart ties often were the only way to big roles. What interested Carson about Gable's story was his change from using ties to get ahead into someone whose talent and appeal made him truly deserve his spot, said the former producer. Unlike some stars stuck on early appeal, Gable grew into his chances, working hard on his acting, building his special screen self, and finally becoming so important to MGM that any past deals didn't matter to his current power.